Okay, so here we are. It's Matt with the House Lab on the road pandemic version. Rode here in beautiful sunny Canmore this morning, and we've got a foundation. We're going to run around and we're going to take a look at various components of a foundation this morning. So there we are. The stage that this foundation is at is it's complete. There's an addition going on in the back. We'll go back and look at the forms and they're getting ready to pour the wall in the back, but that's just an add-on piece. The main portion of the house is completed, and what we've got here is a fully finished foundation. It's probably had its it definitely has had its foundation inspection phase passed, and we can tell that because it's been backfilled. So in other words, you can see the earth around it has been pushed up against the walls. We'll zoom in a little bit. We'll see some of the damp proofing that's gone on the wall. It's sort of a black tarry substance. That tells us that it has been inspected, okayed, and good to go. So let's go take a look. Maybe start with just looking at the sill. It's been poured in. This is your ladder sill type assembly. You can tell the reason we like to call it a ladder, obviously, is it has these cross pieces that appear in it, and if we get lucky, maybe we can see some of that down below where it hasn't been poured. As we move down into the base of the foundation, we can see that it's been filled with gravel. It's covering up the inside of the footing on the inside of the wall, and the purpose of doing this is it provides a drain plane for the basement floor to be poured on later. It's an important note to make, the fact that the basement slab is not poured at this point. It may or may not be, but you can build the entire house that way. Over that way, it's going to zoom in a little bit. You can see a couple of beam pockets that are cast right into the foundation. There's one there, and there's one just to the left right over here above a door. Now there's some wood material inside there. Let's see if I can get in a little bit tighter. What that does, the framer will knock that wood out of there later, so they get the right size hole to place whatever size beam is been spec'd for that. Looking at the face of the portion of the house we were just looking at, this is actually the garage, and I can identify that by looking at the garage door buck, as we call it. So the garage floor pad, once the beams run across from those beam pockets that we were looking at earlier, there's the other side, those two pockets there, you can see where they'll enter in. Once they put the floor in, now I'm not sure how they're doing it, whether it'll be steel beams or maybe precast concrete floor will rest on top of this garage door buck area. And obviously it's a double garage. The second garage door buck is over this way. Looks like the room underneath is going to have an entranceway through that opening in that side wall, and that'll give access to whatever the intention of the room underneath is. Okay, so right down there, what we're looking at in the gravel, you can just see that end of that white pipe and the blue line. That's your water service and your sewer service as well. So you can see there's a little bit of a gap in the footing there, right in the center of the picture. That's where they've come through the footing area. So we used to call that a bridge, or sometimes they'll put a sleeve right in the footing and move that on through there. So that'll supply all the water to the home and the waste, and that'll be connected to whatever service they have out underneath the street.
There's 1 inch to 1.5 foot in here.
Okay, what we're looking at here is just one corner, still just up on the main grade, and you can see just a little bit of the damp proofing appearing above the backfill. A bit of a unique, I was just talking to the cribber, this wall is 17 feet from where we're looking down to the footing. This is just running down the side of the house where they've put some fill down in through the side here and a bit of a retaining wall. I'm not exactly sure what's going on here. I'm suspecting it looks like an outdoor stairwell or something by the way it's stepped on the way down. But we'll go down there and we'll take a look at it from the other way. Okay, we'll just take a quick pan here. This is the main portion of the house. That's the far wall just next to the garage area. If we move down here, we can see again all that gravel's been spread around. That's what the slab will go on top of. It's the far side there. Over here we can see where the electrical services are coming in on the west side of the house. We're going to take a look at that from the outside too, but pay close attention to the way that comes from 17 feet on the right hand side, and it steps down. Looks like 3 to 4, sometimes it'd be 2.5 feet. It varies. So that's a really good example of a stepped wall. And we got to make the assumption that the footing is stepped underneath there too, but being backfilled, we won't be able to see that. In the back here, we can see the forms. The brand name, if you will, is Duraform for those things. They come in a cage for transport and easy to move with a crane. We'll go take a look at those in a few minutes. But these gentlemen down below are extending the foundation out. The homeowner wanted a nice flat area before it breaks off into the woods. There's actually the golf course is in behind there as well. Okay, so there's a real good look at a stepped footing. It's a little messy, a little bit of extra material and just some waste in there, but that'll all get cleaned up later on. And we can see the footing extend down that way, sitting on our undisturbed soil. And there we've got our nice Duraforms sitting on top. They'll get poured later this afternoon. Right here is the connector on how those guys go together. In this area in here is where the snap tie goes. And what the snap tie does, it ties the two pieces of wall together. We're gonna get down in there in a little bit. No, actually, that tie goes in the middle portion. There we go, right there. Yeah. So you can see the snap tie right in the middle, and the two bolts just tie the two forms together. Interesting point to point out here is this little bit of gravel, this clean gravel we see laying here at the approach to the site. It's typically known as an erosion pad. The idea is it remains here throughout a lot of the build. Sometimes later on it can be topped up. It keeps mud out of the house. If we look over this way, we've just got the raw dirt. When it rains, it gets all pretty messy. Ends up getting tracked into the house. Even just during framing, it just makes everyone's life a lot easier if the inside of the house is a little less muddy, a little less dirty. So most conscientious builders, and this is good to see, will put a little bit of clean gravel. Sometimes you'll see recycled concrete that's been broken up. Doesn't really have a whole lot of end use. Sometimes they'll put that here as well. It ends up being backfill at some point too, so it serves a purpose. Got to assume that that's probably the excavator. Maybe that's the one that dug the hole. Probably had a lot to do with the backfill, that's for sure. Quite often, these guys will leave their equipment on site till they get their next hole because it's a bit of expense in moving it. But this is a significant development, so more likely they just work in this area so they can just walk it as they call it. Yeah, they take a little shot of the mountains too. Beautiful Canmore on a warm late August morning. This is backing onto Stewart Creek Golf Course for the golfers in the crowd. And that would be one of the highlights of the area. Okay, so here we're on the living portion of the house on the foundation. You can see some of that damp proofing. That orange paint line on there indicates to the people who spray the foundation where the final grade will approximately be. We rise up to the top, we can identify the outside of that ladder sill. And we can also see this window has been framed out with the wood. You can picture that would have been in between the form before it was stripped off. That's left in place, and that window will just be placed over top of that wood, and it'll get the appropriate weather membrane seal. Okay, what we got here is where the services are entering the side of the house. Trench has long been backfilled up. Again, goes underground in that direction, out to the services from the street. You'll see this, so the big yellow guy's gas line, which has been marked with that big G on there. That tells the gas guys where they can mount the mast. Later on, a meter will come in there to meter the gas input into the house. The larger conduits is the electrical, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of a 200 amp service most likely. And then the other gadgets are things like cable, Cat5. I don't know if they have fiber optic out in this neck of the woods or not. Anyway, what they've done is they've done a trench, and sometimes you'll hear it referred to as four-party trenching. It looks like there might be a separate mast, that bent conduit. Looks like maybe it's heading into a different direction than the other one, so I'm not exactly sure what the builder's doing there, but it looks like there's probably two separate services for some reason. But in any case, this is pretty standard. It'll get attached a little bit more permanently than just that small little strap that we see there. The shiny copper colored line is copper. That's the grounding plate, and what that'll do is that goes underground, and there's a big huge copper plate they stick on the ground. That all things go back and ground to that to get their ground feed. Yeah, a little bit more of that stepped wall with the ladder just attached to the top part, obviously, and there's a little bit of form on the vertical face to get that out here. And that's just the area in the back where the guys are forming right now. If we take a look at this footing here, we can see it's not necessarily exactly how you'll see it textbook style, but this is totally fine, completely sufficient. It'll have the prescribed width and depth and strength of concrete to provide the strength and footing that we need for the house. But as you can see, it's not perfectly straight. It's not going to end up in a museum. It's just here to bear the load of the house. So it's a little bit rough looking, but that's completely fine and normal, quite normal. That's an unused snap tie. And these little cringe parts here, when after the concrete's poured and they want to remove the form, if they hit this with a hammer, the idea is it snaps off there. That's why we call them snap ties. Another angle of what's inside the wall before the concrete comes. There's no ladder in place on this one or any sill of any type because they're not attaching a wall to this portion of the wall. This is a decorative planter back here, so that's why we're not seeing anything in place. And we can get a look down in there. We can see the corner all tied together. Interesting to note how they do the form. There's a square tube here where the form's attached to with the same fastening system that ties one panel to the next as well. Kind of a curious little detail. And then on the inside too, they've got this angled piece as well that is also attached the same way. So that's how you get a corner. Some more great exposed step footing there. Fantastic. Get us down the hill in steps. And once again, this completed portion is the living area of the house. This little guy here, if you've ever wondered what this is that you may have in the center of your driveway at home or somewhere nearby, is the water valve, sometimes known as the curb stop. What that does is a little nut there. There's a tool that reaches down and actually hits a little valve, and it turns off the water to the entire house. So when we were looking at the water supply line that was coming underneath the garage, that is where it's coming to, right to that valve. There's one over here that is for the lot next door. They put these stakes here to kind of protect them because it's pretty common for machinery to damage the darn things, and they're hard to repair. Anyway, that is just to give you some or some context. It's just near the sidewalk on the street, and it will just lead into the foundation underneath that garage there. Here we have the Duraforms that are used for that foundation. These are the cages, these red metal cages that they use to transport them around with. They just pick them up with a crane, or a short trip you can just pick them up with a zoom boom or whatever you have to move them from one location to the next. And you can see the various sizes and components depending on the sizes they need. Bit of a forest of Duraforms, if you will. You can also see just at some adjoining lots now, not far away. Right here we've got two gas inlets for two future homes as well, marked by a piece of scrapped yellow tubing. Whenever you see yellow, that means natural gas. Bunch of half-inch rebar. Usually comes in 20-foot lengths. It's just a stockpile of it, getting ready for the next foundation. And right here, looks like we've got a main floor package for a new build. So we can see those big yellow guys are LVLs, laminated veneer lumber, and we can see some 11 7/8 deep engineered eye joists. Those are the guys with the pink ends. And coincidentally, that's from a plant called Pinkwood, which we'll be touring this Friday, I believe. So we can go see how those are manufactured. We've got some rim or rim board, sometimes called rim ply. It's not plywood, it's made up of oriented strand board. That goes around the ends of our joists where everything's perpendicular. Got some smaller 9.5 or 9 1/4, I can never remember which. high joist there, and we've got some big steel adjustable columns. So this will be supporting the main floor from our footing pads underneath. Those are actually the Weischer style. And a big box of hardware to put all this stuff together. So joist hangers and specialized plates, nails, all that sort of stuff. Framers will often buy one of these small shipping containers to keep their tools. They can lock things up, keep them secure. Interesting to note on top here, what they've got are a bunch of temporary stairs that they'll use throughout the house as it moves up through its different levels. They can cart those around from site job to job. When the permanent stairs come up, they just remove them and take them onto the next site. Another view of the main floor package. You can see there's some pretty big LVL here. Look at these guys. I think those are 18-inch. Those ones on the bottom, right here, these guys right here, those are big, so they're going to be supporting something pretty heavy with those. And there's also more to it than that. We've actually got some lumber here, so this would be their, what we call the main frame package. Got some sheathing goods, some plywood, some subfloor. That'd be the blue stuff there. They've even got subfloor glue to glue their subfloor down to the joists, the boxes, and some sill gasket. Sill gasket goes underneath our walls when we put them down on top of that ladder footing. Keeps air from infiltrating. So all this stuff comes out as tubes of caulking, some roll of polyethylene used for various places where the framer may have to do some insulating. Big, huge package here of all kinds of things that will go into building the house. All right, so that's about everything that we can find today. Virtual tour of a active foundation, and I would expect if they're pouring that today, they'll probably let it sit for a day, maybe 2 days, and strip it, get the forms out of the way. The package is here. There'll be a framer scheduled to come and start putting that floor on early next week. So if we can get here, if time permits, we'll get out and we'll see if we can find out who that is and see what that's all about. So we're going to try and do a little bit more with foundation. There was a lot there. But I hope you enjoyed it. So here we are, the House Lab on the road, pandemic version. All right, I'm gonna go find my tour guide, and then we're gonna hit the coffee. If I can talk him into it, I'll even buy. There he is.